Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for the introduction, Chris. The graveyard slot on the most popular subject around at the moment. Okay, if we sort of get straight on with it. This is the sort of introduction, what we're going to talk about today, really. We'll talk about the background and timeline to the scheme, what it is, how it came about, and the reasoning behind it, if you like. How it developed, and then we'll talk about why we are doing this. Then we'll talk about what changes. Then we'll talk about what is a Red Book valuation. You're probably all familiar with the Red Book valuation, but we'll just quickly wander through that. Then we'll talk about scheme membership, who can join the scheme. Then talk about designations, what you call yourself when you've joined the scheme. Then we'll talk about how you can register, which is probably quite the important bit. Some scheme fees, which I'm sure will raise a few questions, and a process overview. How the scheme's going to work in practice. Okay, the background timeline. So what is the RICS Valuer Registration Scheme? Okay, well, it's a regulatory monitoring scheme for members carrying out Red Book valuations. It's a mandatory scheme. Valuations will be audited. This is something that we didn't do previously, as you're probably aware, to enforce Red Book standards. Okay, how did the scheme come into being? Well, it says there that the scheme was initiated by members serving on the Valuation Professional Group Board. Well, that's not strictly true, because this scheme goes back quite a long way. In fact, it goes back to the 1990s with the Mallinson report, but more recently, in 2002, a gentleman called Sir Brian Carlsberg, you may be aware of the name, was asked to undertake a review of the RICS, and specifically the RICS's approach to regulating standards of valuation and valuers. Now, he concluded, following this review, that the current processes for regulating valuers and valuations were, and I'm quoting here, it says they were obsolete, inadequate, and not fit for purpose. Now, it's strange he said that, because we just didn't have any processes. We just didn't do it, simple as that. So, he suggested that the RICS introduce a compliance monitoring regime in respect of valuers and valuations. Now, as you can imagine, the RICS didn't know what to do about this, because they thought this is going to be very unpopular with our members if we do this. So they merely kicked it about in their sort of committees and groups for a while. Finally, in 2005, Sir Brian came back following a further review and said, basically, why haven't you done what I told you to do in 2002? So it was at this stage that the Valuation Professional Group Board, which is made up of members like yourselves, basically took up the baton, if you like, and developed a scheme which went through various committees until they thought they were happy with it, which they put out to consultation in around about April of 2009. And of course it was put out to consultation to members, stakeholder groups, and basically interested parties, and of course the general public as well. Now, following that consultation process, there were some recommendations which came back. When the scheme originally went out, it was a very stringent accreditation scheme. So we made the changes and it became a registration scheme. Now, it was finally put through International Governing Council in November of 2009, who formally approved the scheme following these recommendations and changes. As you're probably aware, RICS International Governing Council are made up of elected members as well. I think the vote was something like 58 were for, 2 were against, and I think 2 abstained. So it was pretty conclusive. So between November 2009 and September 2010, the RICS developed the scheme in terms of its operational requirements and developed the IT. And then it was formally launched on the 20th of October in the UK last year, basically. As I said before, the scheme is mandatory for all members undertaking Red Book valuations, who must sign up to the scheme by the 30th of April of this year, to continue. Okay, why are we doing this? To continue to raise valuation standards. The RICS believes that improving our standards should be a constantly evolving process to ensure that RICS valuers and valuations remain the global gold standard. Now, in order to improve the quality, we have to monitor what we do. We have to have checks and balances on the work that we undertake. So we'll now be monitoring and auditing the outputs accordingly. Now, in terms of public protection, you're probably aware that the RICS operates under a Royal Charter, which means that, unlike other professional bodies or trade associations, the RICS is committed to giving a high priority to the public interest, rather than simply advancing the interests of its members. Our Royal Charter demands it, and it's what sets us apart from the rest. Now, of course, at all times, the RICS wants to give the best advice, the best technical guidance and standards to its members as it possibly can. But at all times, the public must remain our priority. Also, as well, we wanted to mitigate the risks of statutory intervention. We noted that registration schemes are sort of cropped up around the world in various countries, and I've got a list here of where they have registration schemes for their valuers. You've got the USA, for instance. You've got Germany, Spain, Portugal, Poland, Sweden, Italy, China, and so on and so on. We also noted as well that in this country already, the government has already intervened in a number of professional bodies. You've got the Law Society, which is now regulated by the SRA. This was set up by statute. You've also got the British Medical Association, now regulated by the General Medical Council. And there's others as well. So the risk is, if the RICS does not do this and demonstrates robust arm's-length regulation, then somebody else might. Better we do it than someone else. What I would say as well, this is still on the EU's agenda, and it has been for a number of years. Also as well, the RICS already has a number of registration or accreditation schemes in place. Got a list here. You've got the Commercial Energy Assessors Scheme. You've got the Expert Witness Registration Scheme. You've got the Fixed Charge Receivership Scheme, the Building Conservation Accreditation Scheme. You've also got DRS as well, Dispute Resolution Services, and there's various schemes within there as well. So what we're saying at RICS, this is merely another scheme. Okay, so what changes? Well, RICS registered valuers will be clearly identifiable. They'll be listed in the member directory and also the Find a Surveyor website as RICS registered valuers. And we believe that will be a badge of integrity and competence. Enhanced regulation will protect and improve the perception of valuers. The scheme will minimise risk to members. And this is what it is. It's a risk management scheme. The Red Book was designed to be a risk management tool. If it's used properly, it will mitigate the risk of the member. And also as well, specifically for the financial services sector, who are telling us that because of this scheme, they will now have greater confidence in what we do. As I say, it's recognised by all the major banks and building societies, mortgage providers. We've had discussions with all of them, and they've maintained that from now on, they will only use RICS registered valuers. And also demonstrate to the PI market that RICS has checks on its standards. And we hope this will alleviate the problems that members currently have obtaining PI insurance. Because basically, without PI insurance, you cannot practice. And this is one of the greatest risks to our profession at the moment. You never know as well, premiums may come down